If you raise your right hand, please. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this cause will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Please have a seat. And I'll actually take that document from you. Thank you. Is this defense? Mr. Mueller, this is yours. Thank you. And sir, you've got the microphone in front of your mouth. That's good. If you could give us your full name and spell the last, please.
Trevor Stermer, S-T-E-R-M-E-R.
Thank you. Ms. Seidelman?
Thank you, Your Honor. Trevor, did you know Todd Stermer?
Yes, I did.
How'd you know him?
He was my dad.
And do you know Linda Stermer?
Yes, I do.
How do you know her?
She was my mother.
And in 2007, at the time of the fire, how old were you?
I was 14, turning 15 in a month.
Where did you live?
Lawrence, Michigan, County Road 215.
Who lived with you in that house?
My parents and my two brothers, Trenton and Corey.
Can you describe the house for the jury?
It was a large house. My dad had built it from the ground up. We were all very proud of it. It's a wonderful home for our family.
How long had you lived there before the fire?
We had been there 2 years, approximately.
Was it 100% finished?
For the most part, I would say 95.
Was the 5% carpet and floor coverings?
There was a couple decks that were left unfinished on the outside. There was maybe one room that didn't have carpeting at that point. Well,
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
the basement, I don't believe that was ever supposed to have carpet. We had an epoxy ceiling on the floor and then area rugs, but that was what it was meant to be.
That was what it was meant to be?
Yeah.
And then did you have a ceiling in the basement?
The bedrooms did. The main area, I don't believe that was supposed to have a ceiling at that point.
Where was your bedroom?
My bedroom was the loft area, the third level of the house.
So not the basement, right?
Well, I was only in my bedroom, the loft area, for about a week, maybe. My dad was working on it a couple weeks up to the fire and had just completed it. So I maybe only spent 5 nights in my actual bedroom. Other than that, I slept in the basement with my brothers.
So when you say the loft, it wasn't the basement level, correct?
No,
And it wasn't the main level where the kitchen and the living room were,
No.
correct, right? So was it actually then the second story?
yes, there was another set of stairs that went just to the loft. It was one bedroom and that was my room.
Was it an open loft?
Nope. You would go up the stairs, and there was a doorway on the right that would lead to my bedroom. That was the only room up there. But on the left side of the stairway, there was a small little landing area that looked over the great room.
Do you recall if you had smoke detectors in the house?
Absolutely, yes.
Do you recall how many rooms had smoke detectors?
All of them.
Do you recall if they were working or not?
Yes.
How do you know they were working?
My dad installed every one of them. I knew how meticulous he was about his work and about safety. And there was times I could remember we'd be cooking in the kitchen or something, and smoke would come up and all the alarms in the house would go off at that point because they were all connected. The whole house would sound.
Do you remember the night before the fire?
Yes, I do.
And what do you remember about the night before the fire?
Sometime in the evening, maybe 7 o'clock, an argument broke out between my parents. It was a really heated argument. We were instructed. I would have been staying in my bedroom upstairs in the loft area, but I was instructed to go down in the basement with my brothers because it was such a heated argument. And
Do you recall what it was about?
yes,
What was it about?
well, we could hear very clearly the argument. I mean, it was loud, and you could just hear through the whole house down there. But it started with finance and some issues that they were having, particularly Linda's horses and how that was draining our family. There was a lot of, the argument was spent about infidelities on Linda's part.
Do you remember how late into the night that arguing happened and that fighting?
I would say 10:30 p.m.
And you were in the basement then at that time?
Yes.
Did Linda come down into the basement that night?
She may have come down and just said goodnight, but didn't spend any significant time down there if she had.
She didn't watch TV with you?
No.
Didn't cuddle with anyone on the couch?
No.
Didn't sleep on the couch?
No.
Did you ever see your dad and Linda get physical with each other?
Never saw physical violence.
Ever see any injuries on Linda?
No.
You slept then in the basement that night?
That night I did, yes.
Whose room did you sleep in?
With my brother Corey. His and Trenton's rooms were connected.
Did you hear your dad working on the furnace the night before?
No, he did not come down that night.
Had you spoken to your parents about what would happen if there was a divorce?
I had a talk with my dad at one point, never with Linda.
And that was prior to the fire?
Yeah, a couple months prior to that, my dad and I were sitting at the table and doing a Bible study, and he had brought up some issues that they were having in the marriage, and he said he was only sticking it out because of us kids at that point. And I told him, obviously, I would want to be with him. I would have lived with him if there was any split.
And then you stayed in the basement all night long and slept?
That night,
That
yes,
night?
I had.
Do you recall what happened when you woke up or how you woke up?
I woke up earlier than my brothers that morning, probably 8 o'clock, 8 a.m., and I tried to go upstairs, and Linda had stopped me halfway up the stairs and told me to stay in the basement. I said, I'm going upstairs to get something to eat. She said, no, I'll bring you something down, and brought me down a Pop-Tart or a granola bar, something to that effect. So I went back downstairs and started watching TV. Then maybe around 9 o'clock, an argument broke out between my parents again.
And you heard that argument?
I did, yes.
And you were still in the basement?
Yes.
At some point, did Linda come down?
She did, yes.
And what happened when she came down?
Well, I had attempted to go upstairs again, and she met me at the bottom of the stairs that time and said, she called us boys together, said that we were going to be going up to Portage to go to the mall that day, and she needed us out of the house. She said that we had to go watch a movie. I told her I did not want to go that day, and she insisted.
You told her you did not want to go?
I did not want to go.
Did she tell you why she wanted you to go to the movie?
She said that her and my dad might continue to argue, and she didn't want us to hear that.
Did she give you any money?
She gave my oldest brother, Corey, $20.
So what did you do after she told you to go to the movies? Or the mall, the mall.
It was probably 10:30. She came down and instructed us that we'd be going to the movies. We spent a little bit of time getting ready, my brothers and I, and around 11 a.m. we made our way upstairs, guided by Linda. And once we got to the top of the stairs, She was telling us to remain silent, don't disturb your dad. So we got to the top of the stairs, and the front entryway would have been on our right, going up the stairs, going out of the house. My dad was to the left. I tried to push my way to the left and go say goodbye to him that morning, because he would have wanted to know where we were going if we were leaving the house. She positioned herself in front of me, said, "No, don't disturb him. He's sleeping right now." And I could see him there on the couch. So
You saw him in the living room?
yes, I did.
Did you see his face?
Yes,
Was he awake or was he sleeping?
he was sleeping or incapacitated.
He didn't have his eyes open.
No, he did not.
Did I hear you was strike, Your Honor? Speculating.
Response?
I think I asked him, what do you saw?
I'll allow the question and the answer. It's responsive somewhat to the question.
So you didn't talk to him before you left?
No, I did not talk to him.
And you said Linda physically pushed you away from the living room?
She positioned herself in between me and the living room at that point and put her hands up, told me, "No, you guys need to get out of the house." And she said, was very panicked, and said, "Don't disturb your dad, he's sleeping, be quiet." So at that point I turned, went to the front entryway, proceeded to put my shoes on as my brothers were there as well. And the room circled back around from that entryway, kind of horseshoed around to the living room. After I put my shoes on, I again tried to go the opposite way to go see my dad, because it was just entirely uncommon that I would leave the house without seeing him, saying goodbye to him. And she ran in front of me at that point as well from the other direction and stopped me, said, "No, you need to go."
So you said it was highly uncommon. What was common before you left the house?
We always told our dad where we were going. We'd give him a hug and a kiss goodbye and tell him when we would be back.
Was it common that your mom would leave her purse in her vehicle?
I don't think it would have been too common. Her purse was always with her.
Did you see her purse that morning when you came up from the basement?
It's possible. I can't say for sure.
Did she ever ask you to wait while she took her purse out of the blazer?
No.
Did she come out to the blazer with you as you were leaving?
I don't believe so.
Did you ever see Linda with, or did you know if Linda had more than one cell phone?
She had a second cell phone.
Did you see the second cell phone?
Yes.
How did you know she had a second cell phone?
The second phone had been around for several months prior to the fire. It originated as a business phone. My dad was aware of it at one point. They had a business, we had a large truck, and they would haul trailers and RVs out west to various states, and that was a business practice for them. That was a road phone, or it started that way. 3 months before the fire, my dad instructed her to deactivate the phone. There was no need for it. They were no longer doing that business venture, and she told him that she had deactivated it.
Was there a time that you saw your dad answer the second phone?
I don't recall seeing him answer it, but I do recall him being made aware of her still in possession of that second cell phone.
Do you ever recall any arguments about that cell phone?
Yes, I do.
What were those arguments about?
That was the night before the fire. You could hear him yelling about her still having the second phone in her possession, and a bill that she had concealed from him indicating it was still in use.
Do you recall what vehicle you took then to the movies or to the mall?
We took the Chevy Blazer.
Who usually drove that?
That was Linda's vehicle at the time. My brother Corey was driving that morning.
Do you recall if you had a full tank of gas?
No, it would be highly unlikely that we had a full tank of gas.
Why would it be highly unlikely?
We never had full tanks of gas in our house.
Do you remember how you got the keys?
I don't recall.
So did you go to the movies or did you go to the mall?
We went to the mall first after doing some shopping and some returns that we had from Christmas items. We went to the food court, had a meal there. My brothers and I were discussing some of the divorce talk and how we would proceed as far as where we would live and what that would look like for our lives. And after we had eaten, we made our way over to the movie theater.
What happened when you were watching the movie?
About maybe a third of the way through the movie, I had received a call from a good friend of ours named Steven.
What did you do when you got that call?
He was very panicked when I answered. You could hear in his voice a high level of stress, and he said that your house is on fire. You need to come home right now. And at that point, I didn't ask him if he was joking around or if he meant it. I could just tell he was serious by the tone in his voice, and I stood up and grabbed my brothers and said, "We need to get out of here right now." And it took him a minute, but I just grabbed him by the arm and said, "We need to go home right now."
Did you go back to the house?
We did.
What did you see when you got back there?
Could see our home up in flames. We were stopped at the end of the drive. They had it taped off, but the house was engulfed in flames. I remember looking at my bedroom in particular was just gone. The top level was just gone.
Were you able to go up to the house?
No, they stopped us at the end of the driveway.
Do you recall where you went?
They put us in the back of a cop car, and maybe 5 minutes after that, we drove over to a friend's house of mine, Mr. Masali. They were just our neighbors, and we drove there and waited most of the evening for any details.
Did Linda come then to Mr. Masali's house?
Much later.
Do you remember where you stayed that night?
We stayed at my grandma Sandy's house, or apartment.
Did Linda stay there too?
She did.
Did you talk to Linda that night?
Hardly. I don't believe so.
Did you talk to Grandma Sandy that night?
Yes, I did.
Do you recall where Linda was?
Us three boys would have been out in her living area. She had a pull-out couch, and Linda was staying in my grandma's room. My grandma may have pulled up some blankets on a floor there, and I remember my grandma being awake still, and everyone else was asleep, and I saw her go sit down and just start crying, and I went and sat with her.
You saw who crying?
My grandma.
And you were out with her on that pull-out couch?
No, she went and sat down on the kitchen floor, and I couldn't sleep, obviously, that night. I think everyone else was asleep, but I just watched her for a little bit, and then after seeing her cry, I just walked up and sat with her on the kitchen floor.
Did you remember that if you had any pets at the time of the fire?
We had 2 dogs.
Do you have a cat?
No, we had no cats in that house.
Was it common at your home to have gas cans out in the wintertime?
Depends where you would say out. There were specific areas on our home that gas cans would have been stored.
Where was that?
There was a large semi-trailer that we had built lean-tos off of, and there was a horse stalls on one side of that lean-to and an area where my dad would keep his tractor and various other tools and stuff.
And the gas cans would be there?
There would have been 2 5-gallon gas cans right near the tractor area.
Would it have been common to have 1-gallon gas cans in the yard?
No, that would have not been common.
Would it have been common to have a 1-gallon gas can in the front yard?
No,
Do you have a snow blower?
no, we never had a snow blower.
Any reason in January you would have known to have a gas can in the front yard?
Objection called and speculated.
I'm asking if he knows.
Overruled.
There'd be no reason I could think that we'd have a gas can in the front yard.
What was the size of that tractor?
It was a very large tractor.
And where was that stored?
It was kept under the overhang.
The same overhang you discussed then in the backyard?
It wasn't necessarily in the backyard. It was off to the south of the house, maybe 150 feet away from the house.
Did Linda or your dad ever ask you to move any framed school pictures into the shed before the fire?
No, not that I recall.
Do you recall where pictures would have been stored in the house if they weren't on the walls?
Likely under the basement stairs. There was a little storage area down there.
Where were the Christmas decorations stored in the house?
I'm not sure if we kept them in the house. They may have been brought out to the trailer I mentioned with the overhang. We used that as a storage unit, basically. If they were in the house, I don't recall.
Before the fire, let's even just say the months before the fire, do you recall your father working on the furnace?
Within a month of the fire, probably yes.
Okay. And how about the night or the day before the fire?
He had not done any work on the furnace in those nights.
Had you had issues with the furnace?
Likely a month before the fire, but not directly leading up to it.
Do you know what issues, or did you have any knowledge, any personal knowledge of that?
I couldn't say what was actually happening, but it wasn't turning on at one point, and my dad would have done a repair to mend that.
Did you ever have problems getting down your driveway out to the road, the main road?
No, it was a gravel driveway and very flat. We would have made our way fine.
Did you ever go down with vehicles in from the side yard into the backyard?
In the drier months, it was common. In dry conditions, it was common for us to drive around to the basement. But there was a couple incidents leading up to the fire where it was wet conditions, and we had a couple vehicles get stuck down there, and my dad told us, don't drive any more vehicles down there. I'm not getting the tractor out to pull them out. So it was known if it was wet, you don't drive down there.
So on a rainy day in January, it would be uncommon for someone to drive down there?
Very uncommon. We would have been in trouble.
Did Linda tell you what happened after the fire?
Bits and pieces.
What did she tell you?
She had initially told us that she was doing laundry in the basement, and she heard screams from upstairs, that she made her way upstairs and cracked open the door and saw just smoke and fire, and closed the door and ran back down the stairs and out the basement.
Did she ever tell you anything different from that?
It changed. Little parts would change depending on the date. Many times the door that she exited out would vary, and if I questioned her about it, usually she would just break down in tears, and I would drop the questioning at that point. She never really wanted to open up and talk about it, and I guess I felt sympathy in that regard, and I didn't want to hash it out with her, though I'd wanted clarity on that because it didn't make sense to me.
Did she ever get mad at you for asking about the differences?
Yes.
And what happened during those occasions?
Same thing. She would get hysterical and start crying, and until I stopped questioning. And if you accused her of saying something different, then she would get angry and almost violent with us, especially with my younger brother Trenton.
Your younger brother Trenton?
Yes.
What did you see?
Trenton would make very direct accusations at her, and she would either hit him herself, or I'll never forget, she had told me, Trevor, if you hear him making those accusations, I want you to silence him. You hit him, you do what it takes, you silence him, don't let him say those things. And that was very uncommon because I was bigger than my younger brother, and if we had fought in the past, I would be reprimanded for it. So it was generally, I was told to protect Trenton, and never would any of my parents told me to actually harm him intentionally.
And that's why it stuck out in your head?
Yeah, very clearly.
Did Linda ever tell you what to say before the insurance depositions or before you spoke about what happened?
Yes.
And what did she tell you to say?
There were three things in particular that she wanted us to be on the same page about. She wanted us to downplay how severe the fight that night of the fire was. She didn't want us to really detail how severe that fight was, and it was severe. That was the most heated argument I'd heard from my parents. Second, she didn't want us discussing any talks of divorce to the insurance agent. And the most important one, she wanted us, if we were asked how we thought the fire started, she told us, say it was a chimney fire.
And she told you those things?
Yes.
Did she tell you what to say before any court hearings?
Not that I recall. We weren't very close leading up to the court hearing.
I'm sorry, what was that?
We weren't very close leading up to any court hearings.
So when you say you weren't very close, do you mean relationship-wise?
Yes. We had lived with her 2 years after the fire. The only information we would get was from her. We were very isolated and naive to a lot of the things that were going on, but as details started to emerge, we distanced ourselves from her.
Did she ever talk to you about her affair?
It was pretty common knowledge that it did occur. She did not want to discuss it, I'm sure of that.
Were you aware of an item that Linda described as a duck boat on your property?
Yeah,
What was that?
my dad had a small plastic boat, maybe 6 feet long. It was a rowboat of sorts, and we had a very large pond in the very back of our property. It's probably a 30-acre pond, and he would do duck hunting back there. He used that boat to just to do some of that hunting on.
On your pond?
Yes,
And you said it was plastic?
yes.
Did it have any seats in it?
It had one seat, one removable seat, I believe.
Did it have an engine on it?
No,
Ever have an engine on it?
no.
And you said it was made out of plastic.
As I recall, yes.
Do you recall what color it was?
Yes.
What color was it?
Probably mostly black and green. My dad had let me spray paint it at one point.
He let you spray paint it?
Yeah. It's supposed to be camouflage. I did my best.
You tried to make it camouflage?
Yes.
Didn't turn out very well?
I guess not. I had fun doing it though.
Were you dependent upon Linda for finances when you were talking to insurance agents and when you were testifying?
Yeah.
Because she was your
Yes,
only...
yes, we were very much dependent.
Did she ever tell you what would happen if you didn't say those things that you told the jury?
She said it was important that we do well at the deposition, that if they denied our claim that we wouldn't have anything, that we couldn't rebuild anything, and we wouldn't have a home.
I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Mr. Mueller?
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Stermer.
Good morning.
I just spoke to your brother a little while ago, and I'll tell you the same thing. I've got some things I just want to clarify and understand. This has been difficult for you. I just hope you understand. I'm just trying to do my job.
Yes, sir.
You gave testimony in this case in January of 2010. You remember that?
Okay.
Do you remember, does it jog your memory? Yeah, I remember I gave testimony in a
You-
court.
A testimony?
Yeah, like this, just like what you're doing.
Yes, 2010.
Okay. You were under oath back then, you remember that?
Yes, I do.
And you were 17 years old? Right, 15 at the time of the
Probably
fire?
18 at that point.
18, an adult.
Yes, sir.
You would have known what it meant to take an oath, to swear, tell the truth,
Yes, sir.
right? You were also interviewed by a police officer roughly October of 2009, just a few months before that hearing. You remember that?
Vaguely.
Yeah, but you remember you talked to a police officer.
What did you say the date was?
October.
Of
Fall.
2009?
Yep.
I don't recall a specific conversation at that point.
May I approach, Your Honor? I'll show you a document. It says it's a follow-up report with Trevor Stermer from October 18, 2009. You see your name on there?
I do.
All right, does that kind of jog your memory? Oh yeah, now I remember. I gave a statement or interview to the police.
Okay.
Does it? Okay, I don't know. Does it jog your memory? I remember now, yeah. In the fall, I gave an interview.
I don't recall that specific conversation, but it's likely that I would have.
Okay. And then also, while you were still 15, or maybe, when's your birthday?
February.
So you would have been 16. You gave a statement under oath to a lawyer for the insurance company. Remember that? You just talked about that.
I think I would have been 15 at that time.
All right. Would you agree with me, sir, that in general your memory is better now, or better 15 years ago than it is now?
My memory is very clear now.
Would it also be fair that you don't really like your mom too much?
That would be fair.
Would it be even more fair that you really dislike your mom a lot?
Dislike's not the word I would use.
If we use the word, it's a strong word, you hate your mom?
I don't hold hate in my heart. I'm horrified. I was horrified by my mother.
But when you gave that testimony in a court hearing in January, you had been living with Grandma Stermer for about 6 months, right?
October 2009?
No. In January of 2010, you gave testimony at a court hearing. You remember that?
Yes.
Okay.
I was not living with my grandmother at that time.
Who were you living with?
I was living in a student apartment complex called the Arboretums.
Not with any family?
Not with any family, no.
Okay. You had been apart from your mom for some time, since about the summer of 2009, right?
Correct.
Okay. Your Honor, may I approach too? That document I just gave you, does that jog your memory that, yep, it was January of 2010, I gave testimony at a court hearing?
That sounds accurate as far as the testimony at that
And when
time.
when you were under oath, then you swore to tell the truth, and you did tell the truth, right?
Yes, sir.
When you talked to the police officer, did you tell him the truth too? I mean, he was trying to find out what happened.
Yes.
You would have known it's important to tell the officer the truth.
Correct.
I want to talk to you just a little bit. You talked about the furnace. The furnace would shut off every now and then, right?
I wouldn't say it would shut off every now and then. There had been an issue in the past, and my dad had resolved that.
May I approach, Your Honor? You see that first page where it says September 6, 2007?
Yes, I do.
And there's a man named Mr. Willison from the insurance company. He was asking you questions under oath. You see that?
Yes.
Okay. I want to turn your attention to page 16. Lines 20 to page 17, line 2. You see that?
Yes, I do.
You were asked the question, any furnace trouble? And your answer was, our furnace every now and then would, if we turned it down too low, it'd switch off and my dad had to reprime or something. And then he asked you, did you ever have to do that? Did he teach you how to do it? And you answered, he never taught me how, but he had me hold the bottle while he drained it. See that?
Okay.
So it was every now and then, not just one time, right?
I suppose it could have happened more than once.
And in terms of gas cans that you said, it would be very uncommon to see a gas can in the front yard. You remember that?
Yes.
Telling us that? Let me try to get a picture of what you had in the property. It's a farm. You had a big tractor, you said, right? Yes.
Yes, there was a large tractor.
Big tractor, you had riding mowers?
That would function? No.
Okay. Did you have push mowers?
No.
Didn't have push mowers?
Not that I recall.
If I turn to the same document on page 18, and I'm looking at line 2 to 4.
Okay.
See that? Does that jog your memory? Oh yeah, you had riding mowers and sometimes your dad would use the tractor.
Like I said, there was riding mowers on the property, but they were all broken down at that point.
Did you ever use the big tractor? Were you old enough?
I had.
It's used in the wintertime to drag bales of hay for the horses, right?
I would assume we used it to assist with the horses. I don't recall specifically what attachment we would have had to move large round bales of hay though.
But you wouldn't disagree that horses had to be fed in the winter too.
Absolutely.
And they have to have, and then you had bales of hay all around the property, right? Or brought them in.
Sure, we brought in hay.
Okay. And so you'd use a tractor to drag the bales.
If they were round bales, that would be accurate.
You testified it's completely uncommon, or did you say it would be unheard of to have gas cans in the front?
I believe it would be very uncommon.
Okay. I want to turn your attention to that stapled piece right there. Yep. This was testimony you gave under oath in January of 2010. You swore to tell the truth just like you did now, right?
Yes, sir.
And you told us you did tell the truth because you were under oath and you know what that means.
Yes.
Right. I want to turn your attention to page 113.
Okay.
On line 13, you were asked a question. Well, going back a little bit, you'd say you had 3 or 4 gas cans, you had a riding mower. You see that just a little bit above that?
Yes, I do.
Okay, and then it wasn't unusual for your mom to be the person who filled gas cans, was it? And your answer was, it wouldn't be unusual. No, right?
For her to fill gas cans?
Yeah,
No.
it wouldn't be unusual.
No, it wouldn't be terribly unusual.
And your dad would too, I imagine.
I'm sure we all would.
Okay. Then it says, line 16, and it wasn't unusual for there to be a gas can near the front of the house that needed to be filled. Was there? Your answer was depending. Then the question was, sometimes when the cans were empty and they needed to be filled, rather than leaving them
Your
out.
Honor, I guess I'm going to object again. Instead of reading the testimony into the record, if he wants to ask a question about a prior inconsistent statement or use it to refresh his memory, I prefer that we use the proper form instead of reading testimony.
If I may be allowed to retort,
You may.
he said that it was completely uncommon to have that. I'm showing him his testimony and impeaching with prior inconsistent statement under oath at a trial.
And that's fine, but I would do it in this framework of prior and consistent statement. Didn't you say at such as, didn't you say?
And just ask specifically about the question.
Correct.
Thank you, Your Honor.
It can be Was this question asked and this question answered?
I think the proper way is to say to the witness, isn't it true, or something to that effect, isn't it true that at the prior hearing you said?
Isn't it true at this prior hearing that you said it was not unusual for gas cans to be left by the front porch, where they'd be picked up, put into a vehicle, taken to the station that they could be filled up? And your answer was yes. Isn't that true?
That is what it says, yes.
Okay. You know, it says that, and that answer was given to that question because it was the truth, as you just told us. True?
Like I said previously in the answer, depending, there would be circumstances.
But then when you ask a specific question, just a little bit further, it wouldn't be unusual to have these by the front porch, and your answer was yes. Am I right?
I did say yes.
Okay. And you did say yes because you were under oath to tell the truth.
Yes.
And you did tell the truth.
I think it was a complicated question with layers, and I was instructed to give a yes or no answer.
Well, I don't want to belabor the point, but it was just so that gas cans could be picked up, put into a vehicle, taken to the station so that they could be filled up, right? You weren't told to answer yes or no.
Correct.
Okay. Now your dad, he worked obviously around the farm too, right?
Sure.
But your mom, she loved that house and she loved the whole property, her being a horse, I want to say fanatic, a horse lover.
She certainly loved her horses.
Okay. She didn't think of the house as just someplace to live, did she?
I couldn't tell you how she felt about it.
Well, let me direct your attention to that other testimony on this little binder. And turn to page 27. Line 15. You did know at that time that she cared about the house, right?
Your Honor, I'm going to object again. If he wants to ask him to refresh his memory, or he wants to ask about a prior inconsistent statement instead of reading testimony, and I prefer he follow the proper procedure.
Your Honor,
He
didn't say
This
that he
time
followed.
he is following the proper
you.
procedure for prior inconsistent statements, so I will overrule.
okay. You did say that your mom cared about the house.
I said she cared about it. I don't know to what extent.
Okay. The construction of the house, there was actually a fair amount of unfinished stuff, as you've called it before.
At what point?
Close to the time of the fire.
Like I said, I believe it to be about 95% completed. The decking on the outside was not completed, though.
Well, you said there was no ceiling in the basement, right?
Right.
So that would have been exposed beams,
I
floor joists.
believe there was not a ceiling in that room at that point. I can't recall.
Well, if we go to your statement in that.
Sure.
When you gave that in September 7, about 8 months after the fire.
Can you direct me to a page?
Yep, I'm going to turn your attention to page 25 at the end. To page 26, line 7.
You said 26, line 7?
Yes. Does that,
Okay.
Does that jog your memory about the condition of the ceilings in the basement?
Yeah, that would seem accurate. There wasn't drywall on the ceiling at that point, and I don't think it was meant to be drywalled.
It was open rafters, right?
Yes.
There was no ceiling in the basement.
Okay.
I just want to make sure you and I are clear, right?
Sure.
Okay. And as everybody has told us, the entire living room floor was OSB subflooring.
May I clarify a little bit there? There were rooms in the basement with ceilings.
Understood, we heard some bedrooms,
Sure.
but generally in that whole living rec room area, it was subflooring. I mean, it was floor joist,
Okay.
right?
Yeah, that would seem accurate.
Okay. And as we talked about in the living room, it was nothing but subfloor OSB, that pressed board with some throw rugs.
Yeah, very large area rug,
Okay.
and probably a hearth in front of the fireplace.
So there was, and I'm not talking about trim finishes, there was exposed wood in the first floor main living room area, not just carpentry and trim, right?
Exposed wood on the ceilings?
Not on ceilings, just in general, with bay windows and that kind of thing.
The
You recall?
windows were framed and finished.
That's your recollection?
Yes.
When you gave testimony in September of 2007, Linda Stermer had a lawyer, right?
When I gave testimony in 2007,
Yes, in this little hearing, that we
the deposition.
Yeah, deposition.
Okay.
You met with the lawyer, right? His name was Jeff Getting. Do you remember that?
Okay.
Do you remember that?
I don't specifically remember a conversation with Jeff Getting at that point in time.
Do you recall him telling you, just tell the truth. The most important thing is to tell the truth. Do you remember that?
I don't recall him saying that.
Let's look at page 31. Toward the bottom, line 23. You let me know when you're there.
Reading it now.
Okay. All the way to line 9 on the next page.
Your Honor, I'm going to object. This is hearsay, what the conversation was with Mr. Getting.
1, it's not offered for the truth. It was directive. And he's already testified. I'm just asking to refresh his memory. I'm going to ask him if he now remembers anything.
I'm going to sustain that objection on hearsay.
Okay. Let me ask you, regardless of what Mr. Getting said, you knew enough to tell the truth at that age.
As I said for the deposition, there was a few things that she wanted us to be on the same page about.
Okay. So you would have intentionally lied under oath?
I wouldn't say that, no.
Okay. I want to talk to you about the January 7th that morning. You got up around 11 o'clock, 10 or 11 o'clock in the morning?
No, I was up earlier that morning.
Let me show you. Did I give you a statement? Oh, I did, right, from the police report. The one that we talked about you gave to the police?
Okay, is that the 2009?
Yep, October 2009.
October 2009, okay.
Okay. You said you woke up about 8 o'clock.
Yeah,
Did you tell the police officer on page 1 that you woke up between 10 and 11 a.m.?
I don't recall telling him that, no.
Any reason to think that this police officer got it wrong since you told us just now you told him the truth?
Your Honor, I'm going to object speculation.
I'm just asking if he knows.
That's sustained.
You were given $20 for food by your mom?
My brother Corey was.
But you also, you boys had their own money, right?
Yes.
And you didn't mind going to the mall because you said there's nothing to do in Lawrence, especially for teenagers, especially on Christmas break.
I did not want to go that morning, no.
There was nothing super secret about your mom having you kids go to the mall that morning, was there?
I think it was meant to be secretive, yes.
Okay. Well, let's look at this hearing again. At page 19. Let me know when you're there.
Is this the hearing or the deposition?
This is that one in the binder, the deposition.
Okay. Page 19.
Yep. And then go to line 20. I mean, page 20. At the top. See that?
Is there a line you're directing me to?
Yes, sir.
I didn't catch
Lines
that.
4 to 6.
Lines 4 through 6 on page 20.
That's correct.
Okay.
Where you asked the question, so there was nothing super secret about getting out of the house and going to the mall, and your answer was no. That was your answer under oath, right?
It appears so.
When you swore to tell the truth, right?
I would assume.
Okay. And you did tell the truth, right?
That's not how I recall it at this point.
You also said it was very rare. Did you say it was very rare for your mom's purse and your dad's wallet to be in the cars?
I don't believe I said that.
Today?
Yeah, just this morning. You were asked, remember you were asked questions about purse and wallets being in cars, and was that common? You said no. Remember that?
I think that's a miscategorization of the testimony from earlier.
Do you remember what you said?
Allow the questions.
I don't believe that question was asked this morning.
Was it common, or I should say, was it not uncommon for a purse and a wallet to be left in the car, given you're in a rural area?
My dad would have likely left his wallet and potentially keys in his work van.
Yeah. But not your mom.
I can't say.
Well, if we look at page 2 of that police report you gave, should be, I hope there's a highlighted second paragraph. Is there?
There appears to be.
Okay. And in that paragraph, you told the police officer that it was not uncommon for his parents to leave their wallet or their purse in vehicles outside. Remember that?
That is what's said, yes.
And that's, you told us you would have told the truth. True?
True.
Because he's a police officer trying to do his job, right?
I would assume so.
Yeah. You said it'd be highly unlikely for the gas tank to be full in the Blazer. Do you have a specific recollection sitting here in 2025 when you went to the mall of the level of the gas in the Blazer?
My older brother was driving that morning, but it would have been very strange to see a full tank of gas.
It certainly wasn't completely impossible, right?
Nearly.
You were the front seat passenger, right?
I know I was the front seat passenger on the way back, at least. I don't recall on the way there.
Your mom had told you on the way out, just come back when you're done from the mall, right?
No, she did not.
Okay. What did she tell you?
She had instructed us that we were to go to the mall and that we had to go see a movie after the mall. I didn't want to see the movie. I had already seen the movie.
Understood. But she didn't tell you, I want you out of here until dinner time or 5 o'clock or anything like that, right?
She wanted us gone at minimum 4 hours.
Can we turn to that binder? Page 16, line 8. And you were asked the question, was there any discussion with your mom about when you needed the blazer back or how she'd come to get it or anything like that? Your answer was, I think she just said, come back when you're done. Then you were asked, so it wasn't a specific time. You didn't have any plans that afternoon. Your answer was no. Was that true when you gave that testimony under oath? And you swore?
Yes, that was true.
Okay.
As I said, we were instructed to go to the mall, then to lunch.
Your Honor, no
I
question.
apologize.
Move to strike non-responsive. You said you saw your dad on the couch, is that right?
Correct.
And then you said he was sleeping, and I think you added something, right?
What did I add?
Well, he was sleeping as far as you knew, right?
Yes.
Okay. Like usual, right? Because he always slept on the couch. Take
I can't-
naps.
It wasn't common. He could have taken naps on the couch.
It was not common?
I don't recall.
Okay. If we go to page
Sure thing.
14 on this.
What page?
14, sir?
Sure.
Line 25 to the next page at line 4. All the way to 15, line 4. You see that?
Page 14, line
Line 25
25.
to 15, line 4.
Okay.
You like laying on the couch, taking a nap like usual. True?
Yep.
And you didn't know what he was wearing, and you didn't really know where he was sitting, right?
I know where he was laying, yes.
Okay. But you didn't know what he was wearing because you were getting kind of rushed out of the house. Fair?
I did not see what he was wearing.
You asked some questions about domestic violence. You know, did mom hit dad? Did dad hit mom? You remember that?
When was I asked?
This morning?
Okay.
Do you remember that?
Yes.
Okay. You said you never heard dad hit, or you never saw dad hit mom. You remember telling us that?
Yep.
Did you hear dad hit mom?
No. I know there was allegations, but that I had physically witnessed, no.
Okay. Or heard?
Or heard, no, I wouldn't be able to hear.
But they never hit you, the boys, right? Mom and dad never hit the boys.
No. Not out of anger. I would have been disciplined, but
Okay. It was hold on. Just a little bit more. Talking about the family relationship, everybody was close. You were equally close to mom and dad, true? Growing up.
did you say equally close?
Yes.
No, I was my dad's son.
If we go back to this testimony again. On page 14. line 20.
Okay.
And that would be line 20 to 22. You weren't closer to mom or dad, equal as far as you were concerned, and the answer was, yeah. See that?
That's what it says, yes.
And that's what it says when you're under oath and answer to that question, right?
Okay. I was far closer to my dad.
Even though you swore to tell the truth then.
Yes.
And if your parents were to split up, you said it was just kind of too close to call who you're going to live with, right?
That's what I had said here.
Under oath when you were sworn to tell the truth.
I think it was irrelevant. My dad was dead at that point. Linda was all I had left.
But you were just asked a question about if they had split up before the fire, who you're going to live with, and you said it's just too close to call.
Yeah, I would have absolutely lived with my dad.
Okay. And you said this was maybe the worst argument the night before or that morning that you ever heard them, mom and dad, have?
Yeah, this was the worst argument.
Okay. You sure it just wasn't a medium type argument where
No.
dad was yelling more than louder than mom?
It was the worst argument that we had witnessed.
Okay. If we go to page 13, line 13 to 17, see that?
Yep.
Did you tell that lawyer under oath that the argument was, in terms of level, was medium, I guess?
That's what it says here, yes.
Yeah. Give me just 1 second, Your Honor. You said you tried to talk to your mom a lot about the fire afterwards?
Did I say that I tried to talk to her a lot about the
Yes.
fire?
Did you?
Is there an instance you're referring to, or just in general, like over
Yeah.
the next few years?
Yeah, just in general over the next 2 years.
I would bring it up, yes. I wanted clarification on some things.
If we turn to page 22. Line 6 to 14. You there?
I'm here.
You never actually asked anybody, you testified under oath, you remember that? Including your mom.
Can you repeat that?
Sure, you never asked anybody, including your mom, about the fire you testified to.
I have asked details of that day.
But under oath, you said no.
Can you repeat which line that is?
Sure. Just really quickly. Line 6 to 14. You said you never actually asked anybody. Your mom, the police, anybody? Not that I remember. True?
To the initial question, how the fire started?
Yes. And then you were asked, have you ever asked? And you said, I never actually asked anybody. Those were the questions you were asked and the answers you gave under oath, right?
Yep.
And they were true because you were under oath.
She gave me her version, and I wanted to believe that to be true.
The shed, the stuff that was stored in the shed, we've seen pictures of gas cans. There were some gas cans. What was stored in the shed generally?
It was a workshop area for my dad. There was a very large deep freezer that took up one side of the shed.
Freezer, what else?
Freezer, traps, hunting equipment, decoys. Hunting equipment like decoys. My dad was an avid duck hunter, also whitetail.
And you said, I think I heard you right this morning, you don't recall finding a box of photos or anything in the shed after the fire.
I don't recall. I wasn't allowed near the property.
Immediately after the fire?
No.
Like within a few weeks, months?
It took at least a month and a half before I was able to go back on the property.
When you did go back on the property, you remember being with Steve and Tina Benny?
They may have been there with Linda.
Okay. And you were going through stuff, trying to hopefully find some stuff that was important to you
Yeah.
and important to the family?
Yep.
Okay. You just don't remember any details of that, am I right? Finding anything in the shed, a box of pictures or anything?
It was rubble. I found little trinkets in the ashes, or
I'm talking about the shed.
the shed. I can't think of anything specifically that I would have pulled out of there.
Okay. And you don't recall being told by either mom or dad to take pictures out to the shed and put them in there?
Into the shed
Yes.
or the storage area
Well, you
with the
asked about-
overhang?
You asked about the shed,
The shed.
yeah, or the storage area, wherever it was. You don't recall being asked by mom or dad?
To bring pictures from the house out there?
Yes.
No, I don't.
Okay. And then finally, I just want to, one more time real quick with this vehicle. It's a Chevy Blazer. You're either in the front on the way back, you're in the front on the way back. You don't know if you're front and back on the way down, right?
Correct.
It's about 32 degrees. Remember being cold? It's January in winter.
May have been closer to 40 when we left.
In the winter in January, the windows would have been up, right? Do you have that memory?
I don't recall if we had the windows down at any point.
Do you recall there being any strong, unusual odor in the vehicle?
I don't recall one way or another.
Certainly, if something was stinking up the car, you'd probably remember that, right?
Objection, Your Honor, speculation.
No. You've been in the car.
I'll allow for
Thank you.
cross-examination overruled.
If there was something stinking up the car, you'd remember it.
I can't say.
You smelled gasoline before, obviously, right?
I have.
You know it's a strong, pungent odor.
I'm aware of what gasoline smells like.
Have you ever had gas in your car before? Like just from filling up a gas can?
Yes.
All right. It smells, doesn't it?
Yes.
Give me 1 second to consult, Your Honor. When you did find stuff, when you were rummaging around trying to find valuables, you said you found trinkets?
Sure.
I just want to know.
I don't recall any specific thing.
Like baseball cards, you were a baseball card collector like I was when I was your age?
I had a very large collection of cards.
You find any cards?
I did not.
Do you know if anybody did?
Linda had given me a stack of cards that she said that Benny, I believe.
Steve?
Yep. Her two friends had found.
Okay.
They were given access to the property and were going through it much more than I was able
Okay.
to.
Thank you, sir, for your time.
Yes, sir.
Again.
Thank you, Your Honor. I just want to clarify a couple of things. You said there were layers to your answer about why a gas can would be on the front porch. Can you talk about what you meant by that?
I felt at the last time I was giving a testimony, I was instructed to give yes or no answers to complex questions that weren't quite that black and white.
So you were not able to answer them fully?
Right. I was prompted to give a yes or no answer.
And were you able to ever explain that question or that answer?
No.
And how would you explain it today?
I couldn't think of any reason that there would be a gas can laying in the front or up at the front. I really think it was uncommon that it would have been. We had designated areas that we would have kept gas cans.
So those were the layers you were not able to explain.
Yes.
When you said it was usual for your dad to be taking a nap on the couch, was it usual that he took naps? Was it usual for that time of day?
I felt it was not the most common thing, but their argument had gone late into the night, and I didn't think it was weird that he would have been taking a nap, but the fact that he didn't wake up when we were leaving, I thought that was very uncommon for him. And as I said, he would have wanted us to know where we were going. He would have wanted us to tell him where we were going.
So that part wouldn't have been usual.
Right. Very unusual.
When you were asked about going to the mall and to the movie, you said that you felt you needed to be gone for a minimum of 4 hours. Why did you say that?
The way that she had discussed it that morning, because I didn't want to leave. I remember trying to get to my dad. That was one of the biggest reasons that I was trying to make my way to him, was because I knew if I was able to talk to him, he would say I could stay home that day. I didn't want to go. But she had framed it as, I said, can we just go to the mall and do what we have to do, make our returns, make a couple purchases? No, you have to go to the mall, you need to go to lunch, and you need to go to the movie theater after that.
And that's why you said it felt like a minimum.
Yes.
In 2009, you said you were living at an apartment.
October of 2009, yes.
October of 2009. Were you going to school?
I was.
Still relying on Linda financially?
At that point, I believe we had distanced ourselves from her.
Do you still need her help? For school aid or anything?
I don't believe so.
Did you feel that you still had to comply with her instructions on what to say?
No.
Not at that time?
No.
When did you feel that you had to say things according to her instructions?
Certainly when we were living with her, the first deposition, as I said, there was a few things that she wanted to make sure we were on the same page with. And the 2 years after the fire, we were still living with her. So, like I said, we just felt very isolated. The only information we were getting was from her. If other people brought information to us that was contrary to what she was telling us, she would try to cut off those relationships and just keep us isolated and let her narrative be the only one that we heard.
So you only knew what she told you?
Right?
During some of these interviews that you did with insurance or court hearings, did you withhold facts?
It's likely, yes.
When you were instructed to give yes and no answers, were you able to tell details?
No, absolutely not.
Did you feel free to start elaborating?
I did not.
Would you ever use the 1-gallon gas can to fill that large tractor?
No.
One of the areas that you said Linda instructed you specifically to talk a certain way about was the arguing. Is that correct?
Correct.
Would that be the extent of the argument?
Yes, she wanted us to downplay the severity of it.
You started to kind of talk a little bit about how Linda felt about her horses. Can you tell me how she talked about them?
It was like that was all she cared about. She would have anywhere from 20 to 30 horses at a time, and they would be kept at various properties so that my dad wouldn't find out how many we actually had. It was always a sore subject in our family because it was just turned into an obsession that was draining our family financially.
She spent a lot of time with those horses.
Quite a bit, yes.
Did she love those horses?
Yes.
Did Linda, before any of those depositions or hearings, did Linda ever say, "I just want you to tell the truth"?
No.
I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you. I want to make sure we are all clear on this timeline. When you spoke to the police in October of 2009, you weren't living with Linda anymore, true?
Correct.
And you were not under her, I'm going to say, control, true?
Correct.
And I think, weren't you 18 by that time?
Yes.
Okay, so you're a grown adult, making your own decisions, true?
For the most part, yes.
Okay. And you told us, you spoke the truth to the officer, so whatever the report that we talked about, when I showed you those sections, that was the truth, right?
I would have wanted to be truthful with the officers.
And when you gave testimony in January of 2010, you were not living with Linda Stermer.
Correct.
You weren't under her control.
No, I was not.
You were a grown man.
Yes.
And you swore to tell the truth in a court just like this, probably in this courthouse, and you told the truth.
Yes, sir.
So when I've shown you those sections from that testimony in 2010, that was the truth, right?
I certainly want to be truthful.
Okay. You said it was your habit to say bye to Dad, right? When
To
you
say
leave the
goodbye to
house.
my dad, yes.
Yeah. But you didn't talk to him this time. He was sleeping. You knew he was sick, had been sick, right?
He may have been on the mend. He had an ear infection prior to the fire. I think he was on the mend.
In any event, you didn't talk to him and you didn't wake him up because he was sleeping. Fair?
I would have woken him up.
But you didn't, right?
I was stopped.
And finally, this idea of, you were asking questions right now about not wanting to go to the movie. One of your good buddies is Steve Dunn. He's the guy who called you about the fire from when you were in the theater, right?
Yes.
And you'd hang out with him all the time,
Yes.
with your brothers too, right?
Correct.
And you were both, all three, the brothers were close, right?
My brothers and I were all close,
Yes.
for the most part.
As brothers, sure, you fight, but as brothers, you loved each other and were close.
Yes.
That there were plans to go to the mall the next day, the Sunday of the fire that you had been making with Steve Dunn. You remember that?
That we were to include Stephen,
Yeah.
as in he was supposed to come with us.
You had been making plans the Saturday night, which would have been the 6th, right? Fire's Sunday the 7th.
I follow that timeline, yes.
Okay. So on the 6th with your buddy Steve, was he your buddy or Corey's buddy?
He was Corey's age, but we all hung out together.
Okay. Y'all hung out on a regular basis because, like you said, not a whole lot to do in Lawrence.
I wouldn't say that.
This is on a Sunday, this is on a Saturday, you were making plans, but then Steven didn't want to go to the movie, am I right?
I don't recall him being invited.
Okay. Give me 1 sec. In this examination you gave, on page 9, line 19, to line 24, you let me know when you're there.
Okay.
Okay. You and your buddy Steve and your brother just usually go out because there's nothing to do around there. Lawrence, where you live. Fair?
I don't see any reference to Stephen.
Well, we would just usually go out because there's nothing to do around there. The point is, you'd go out and hang out at malls and stuff like teenagers do.
We would go to the mall periodically.
During that summer of 2009, where were you staying? In Macedonia?
The summer of 2009.
Yes. After Mom had been charged.
No, not Macedonia.
Were you living with your aunt or were you living with your grandma?
I believe I stayed with my grandma for a short while before moving into the Arboretum there.
Okay. I don't have any more questions for you. Thank you for your time, sir.
Yes, sir.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Jury, do you have any questions of this witness, anyone? Okay, I see several hands going up. I have some questions from the jury. No objection from counsel. There is one question I've determined under the law not to ask, but I am asking the others. Did you or your brothers have Linda's second cell phone?
I don't believe we would have had possession of that cell phone at any point.
At any, the day you left to the mall and movie?
No, I don't believe so.
Were pictures ever hung on the walls after you moved in?
A few, not very many.
Did the baseball cards look as if they had been in a fire, or were they in perfect condition?
They looked like they had smoke damage.
About what time was the last time you heard your dad's voice the morning of the fire?
There was the argument around 9 o'clock. At around 10 o'clock, I think it was silent upstairs, and that was the last I heard him.
Okay. Did you ever receive money from insurance to replace your lost things?
No, I did not.
When you drove the tractor, did you ever fill it with gas or diesel fuel?
It used gas fuel.
And some of these are kind of repetitive, but I will ask them again. The baseball cards you received, were they yours from prior to the fire?
They were my baseball cards. It was only a small fraction of my collection, and it seemed as though somebody had gone through and picked out the better ones.
Okay. And again, were they damaged by smoke, water, etc.? If not, where were they found, if you know?
There were yellowing. I was very meticulous about how I kept my card collection. I'd put them into penny sleeves and into top loaders, and then I had a large case that I kept all of my cards in. When I received the cards from Linda, there was only a fraction of my collection, and there was smoke damage, but they were intact. There was, by smoke damage, I say all the penny loaders were yellowed and looked like smoke.
Okay. What film were you supposed to see? Was there a specific showtime?
I don't know if we were told to see a specific film. The film that we ended up watching was called Aragon, and the showtime was 2:40. I know that because I still have a ticket stub in my possession.
Where were any firearms or ammunition stored?
My dad had a gun safe, actually in the furnace room. Under the stair there was a large area where he kept his guns and ammunition.
Is your perception of the truth today different than your perception of the truth at the time of the fire and previous interviews?
I have a very clear memory of what happened that day as I sit here today. Everything I've said I believe to be truthful.
What was the typical use for a 1-gallon gas tank on your property?
I don't recall any specific use for a 1-gallon tank.
Around what date did you start calling your mother Linda?
Before the first time I testified, June of 2009 was the year I graduated, and she was charged in that same time frame, so June of 2009.
Please refresh. Where was your dad the day of the fire in the living room?
He was laying on the couch right under the bay window area. His head was facing towards the south of the house.
Okay, thank you. Counsel, any questions in light of those questions and answers from the jury, or from the witness?
Did you have your own cell phone at that time?
I did.
And did your brothers have their own cell phones too?
Corey definitely did. I'm not sure about Trenton, but I think it was likely.
And so any phones that your parents had, they would then have them?
No.
I'm sorry, any phones that your dad and Linda had, you wouldn't have been carrying?
No, absolutely not.
And I just want to clarify the question that you were asked about perception of truth. Did you testify and go into those depositions with the idea of trying to mislead?
I wanted to be as truthful as possible. When Linda told us to say it was a chimney fire, I wanted to believe that to be true. So that was my perception of truth at that time.
So your perception is you were trying to believe what you were being told.
Yes.
So today when you sit here, you're telling us what you believe to be true, correct?
Absolutely.
What you were told by Linda was true, is that correct?
Objection.
Can you rephrase? That's confusing.
Sorry. So today, you're telling the jury what Linda told you to say.
Objection, form, leading.
It is leading. Sustain.
What type, when you're sitting here today, are you testifying today from your memory?
Yes.
Does your memory include statements Linda made?
Somewhat, yes.
And your memory includes what you remember?
Absolutely, yes.
I don't have any further questions, Your Honor. Thank you.
A little bit. The cards, the baseball cards that you got back, you said they looked like they had smoke damage.
Yes.
I mean, they looked like they'd been in a fire, right?
Sure.
Okay. And you don't, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but you don't know if you were specifically going to see a movie. You ended up seeing Aragon, was the movie?
We saw Aragon, yes.
Okay, but you had been at the mall buying stuff,
Right.
right? So you're just at the mall, and then you decide, whatever, as a group, decided we're going to go see the 240 show, Aragon.
I think my brothers wanted to see that, and the time lined up with after we were finished at the mall there.
You recall you even bought an American Eagle shirt at the mall?
I did, yeah.
All right.
I do recall that.
So it wasn't a direction, we are going to the mall to see this movie at this time. That's just how it happened to work out. Fair?
That's fair.
Okay. This question about your perception of the truth then versus now, you knew what the truth was then, true?
During the deposition, I did not know what the truth was.
In 2009, when you talked to, and you weren't under oath when you talked to a police officer in October '09, but you still told the truth, right?
My perception of truth in 2009, I still, like I said, I was isolated. I had just stopped living with Linda, and I hadn't learned of hardly any details. Felt like I was living under a rock
Okay.
with everything that emerged.
Did you just tell us about 20 minutes ago when I was asking you questions that you were a grown man in October of 2009, not under her control? Did you tell me that?
Yes.
And so you knew the truth, what the truth was at 18 years old, right?
I knew what I believed to be true, and that's what I testified to.
Okay. And when you testified at that hearing in this courthouse in January 2010, your perception of the truth was you knew what the truth was and how to tell the truth under oath, right?
Yes, I would want to tell the truth under oath.
Thank you. I don't have any other questions.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Jury, any other questions? I've got one more question coming in. Sir, more questions? No objection from counsel. Did you always store your baseball cards in your room? And if not, where?
As I said, my dad had just completed my bedroom. I know the day before the fire, I was shuttling things between rooms, moving all of my possessions up into my room. I was really excited to have my own room for the first time. Probably half of my collection was in my room. The other half would have been in my brother's at that point.
Did the penny sleeves show signs of heat damage?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. Counsel, any more questions in light of those questions and answers?
Half your collection was upstairs in the loft, all right?
A good portion of it was upstairs in the loft. I know my Pokemon cards were up there. My Pokemon cards, which would have been much more valuable today.
And then the other half was downstairs in the basement where Corey and Trenton were living.
The collection in question, I know to be in a specific case that I had, and that would have been still in my brother's room.
In the basement.
Yeah, I didn't receive the whole case, just a portion of them.
Thank you.
Anything else?
No, Your Honor.
Okay. Excused from his subpoena, counsel?
I'd ask that you please be excused, Your Honor.
No problem, Your Honor.
Thank you. So you're all done. You're excused from your subpoena.